We're here with Darin Goble, VP of Solutions at Welocalize. Darin, there's been a lot of hype recently and concern as well of large language models and AI in the language industry. How would you assess the situation? What do you see happening in the market?
I see demand and a lot of questions from our customers on where they begin on their journey. How do they start that journey? We view a large language model like we would view neural machine translation. At some point in time, is it 6 months from now? Is it 3 months from now? Large language models, with the amount of money that's getting invested into them, they're going to eclipse neural machine translation. So I don't think we see those as enemies. We just see either one as being a viable option for giving a human translator a lift to getting great quality.
Okay, so if you're a large organization, what would be the first steps you'd take? I mean, would it be evaluating your own business model and then speaking to somebody, or what would you recommend them to do?
If it's specifically on the topic of large language models as a proxy to MT, I would say, and we're doing this for some of our customers where we've trained neural machine translation engines, introduce that large language model into the traditional bake-off, if you will, of like which model performs best on which content. And we have a whole team working with our customers to do just that. And the findings are interesting. It's not always a better or worse scenario. It's a different scenario. The key will be figuring out how to implement that at scale and what it's going to unlock beyond just being a proxy to an MT engine.
Okay, so if you're evaluating different solutions, how do you evaluate different solutions on a practical basis? Do you use blue scores, you other mechanisms? How would you evaluate which is the best solution?
All of that comes into play with blue scores, meteor scores, chirp scores. Like I say, we have a neural machine translation team within our organization that is fine-tuned on that. But to be honest with you, I think that's not really the question we're asking ourselves right now. We don't really care if a large language model is going to surpass a Systran model or a Microsoft model. We believe that in very short order, singularity is going to kind of happen on that front, and it just becomes another tool in the toolbox. What's interesting, I think, from my perspective about that is having that large language model embedded directly into the content system where the authors are working and not having to loop back through machine translation engines and traditional low tech stacks. They're going to have it at their fingers right there.
So once a company decides that they want to proceed and they're talking to perhaps a vendor to help them, how do they decide what sort of project in terms of size? Do they start with something quite large, which management often demands, or something small? How would they go about this?
No, it's a good question. I think unequivocally we would say start with something small, start with something manageable, start with something safe. Not every foray into the world of a large language model is going to end at success, and some of those successes can lead to other failures. In simple terms, and we have a customer that we're doing this with right now on knowledge base articles for an internal audience. Well, that's a safer place, right? And so we're starting to use a large language model to help them generate the source content, and then maybe just go straight prompt into target for those. But you'd want to start small on that, because if they have to pivot back to an old way, they can. If they started large and failed, that have repercussions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so within the role of, say, the translator in all of this, there's been a lot of discussion about the human in the loop, and where do they fit in? I mean, are there any trends that you see in terms of AI, roles related to AI, job shifts that you can talk about?
Yeah, a couple things on that topic. First of all, I think we all need to do a better job of understanding and listening to the translators and the copy editors. We're giving them all these tools. The TMS companies are giving them all these tools, and I'd like to see more of that studied. How are they using it? Do they feel like it's really helping them? We did a study with our developers using a GitHub Copilot, and 90% of our developers said they felt like they got much greater performance out of their experience using that Copilot. But did it actually improve productivity? In other words, that performance should mean that more stories get into each sprint. Well, there's an analog to that back to a translator. Is a translator actually able to do better work, faster work with these tools? And I just don't know that it's being studied enough. Maybe it is. And as I mentioned in the talk, who knows if translators start becoming prompt engineers and content prompt engineers, and whether they're doing that at source or target. That's certainly one area, and I read translator blogs, and there's a lot of them kind of talking about that. We do believe humans in the loop are super important, and it's a little bit of a longer answer here, but if TMSs as we know them today start to take on a different form, because the large language model is embedded in the content system, and you need to get eyes on that content, then there's a work surface that needs to exist over here, so that final editing before publication can happen there. And I think that that's going to be a real inflection point in terms of, do we stay with heavy TMS infrastructure, or do we start to see light TMS infrastructure bought right into Adobe Experience Manager, WordPress, Drupal, Contentful, all those places where our content lives?
I think we see the experimentation happening, so I guess only time will tell.
Time will tell.
Thank you very much, Darin.